Exactly as discussed in the video 3 days ago, the first move out of a symmetrical triangle is nearly always a fake out, with Bitcoin now suffering from a post-pump pullback. Will the bulls have enough to give Bitcoin a real push, a real bust out of this pattern once and for all? Or has the slightly hot CPI combined with a failure to launch, a failure to bust, doomed the bulls to a destiny of dumpage, dumpening, and massive dumpy for the next week? As discussed a few days ago, Bitcoin did have a breakout out of this triangle, but exactly as discussed, it was a fake out. Bitcoin had a little move to the upside and literally within a day then got completely smashed, dumped back into this triangle. And now today with the CPI coming in a little itsy bitsy tad hotter than the expectations, is Bitcoin in store for a mega dumpy or in fact a mega pumpy? So if you understand it's always dumpiest before the pumpiest, hit that like, hit the subscribe, get sent up to BINGX below if you buy Bitcoin or altcoins. Without any further ado, let's absolutely dump in even, to this triangle, where the last time that I posted a video, Bitcoin was right about here. And Bitcoin did initiate a move. And as you can see on this 4-hour chart, it was very quickly rejected completely. I mean, I wouldn't even say this really held here for, it did. It held here for a couple hours, which is not really a successful retest. In fact, it is the example of not a successful retest. And currently we're kind of just trading even lower, currently right in the middle of this symmetrical triangle. But is it all doom and gloom? Or in fact, is this just a pre-bust before an actual bust to the upside? So right, as we talked about, for some reason, it happened again. It turned out to be true again. Symmetrical triangles always have a fake out first before actually having its real move. And it's always right around this, if we take this is the beginning-ish and this is the end, it's always kind of like, in the 70-ish% range where we have that fake out. For some reason, symmetrical triangles always have these fake outs. But the big question you might be wondering now is, since we've had this fake out, are we now doomed to get mega dumped on? Or is it possible that we have a fake out to the upside, we come back, and are we still going to be able to manage to actually have an upside pumpy? So I want to look at a few things first. This is the entire altcoin market cap, the total 2 chart. We are as well forming a longer symmetrical triangle here as well. And we have not had a fake out on this chart. We have not had any actual breakout on this chart. In fact, we just, as of today, touched on the bottom of this, which is right around 1.1 trillion. Currently, we're now at about 1.14 trillion. So we had a little bit of a bounce again at the bottom of this triangle. So we haven't really seen a true mega move at all out of the initial symmetrical triangle, but also even this much bigger total 2 chart, which is much more massive in my opinion, because ultimately what I think is going to be happening on this chart over the next few weeks is going to be something like that. But are we going to have another one of exactly what I just said, another one of those fake outs first? Because on this chart, we have not had a fake out yet. Only on the Bitcoin symmetrical triangle, the total 2 chart is much bigger, and that has not had a pump or dump yet, hasn't had a decision yet. Also, it's important to note the Bollinger Bands have actually gotten tighter since this move has happened. We've actually seen the Bollinger Bands tighten up. The BBWs, nice. BBWs have gotten a little lower as well, a little tighter, indicating that we have not seen an actual mega move yet. We have not seen any sort of follow through. We had this, as we keep talking about, this little itsy bitsy move to the upside, but this is nothing. This is not the actual move. It's what you call a fake out. We haven't actually seen the big move yet. And 2 things. One, I think there is a possibility that we actually can move higher, but I want to talk about something much bigger. So we're seeing the stock market continue to have this downtrend that's lasted for about the last 2 weeks. We see the DXY pumping massively here. Why? Because CPI came back a little bit hotter. We've been talking for the last 2 or so weeks about the idea that maybe we will not get a single rate cut this entire year, which is very far from the expectations that were only a few months ago. Just a few months ago, the base case and most expectations had 3 to 6 rate cuts. And over the past few weeks, I think a lot of people have thought, okay, maybe 1 to 3 rate cuts. And now it's looking, again, possible that, hey, maybe we won't get rate cuts. Maybe it's like 0 to 2, 0 to 3 rate cuts this year. And the DXY is pumping on that news because the inflation is, and I've always said this, everyone knows this, I think most people agree, inflation is still very high. Even if the numbers start ticking down month by month or report by report, everyone knows inflation is most likely higher than what's being reported. And regardless, inflation still isn't good. It's not like in a good place. It's always just been a question of is it better relative to what people thought it might be. But with that, yeah, inflation isn't great. The stock market is dumping on that news as well. We look at, the SPX is down over 1%. The NASDAQ is down over 1%. The Dow Jones is down over 1%. That's a big move for the stock market. We're down 1570 or so was the high for the SPX. Currently, we're at 5130. 5270 was the high. Currently, we're at like 5150. So a little over 100 points down on the SPX. This could, and I want to talk about this. This could be the beginning of a little bit longer of an actual downtrend. A downtrend in the stock market, a downtrend in Bitcoin as well as we lead into the halving, which is only about a week and a half away. We're so close to the halving. It's incredibly close. And historically, the time of the halving, like when we actually have the halving occur the day of, it's not typically bullish. In fact, it doesn't necessarily get bullish at all until months after the halving. So this could be lining up very nicely for, quite honestly, the last big dump. And I've been talking about this idea for the past couple of weeks, but we haven't actually gotten a big dump yet. I still think that we could see that before we have our true explosion here. We've just been consolidating. If you look at the daily chart for Bitcoin, we've been consolidating within a very clear symmetrical triangle. It's been consolidation. It's a nice way of saying sideways. We're not putting in new highs. We're not putting in new lows. We're just trading sideways in this pattern that, granted, has the ability to, at the end of this pattern, make a massive move. I think it will have a big move at the end of this pattern. But for the past month, we have been trading sideways. And I think this is the last sideways pattern we're going to get before the true uptrend. But that possibly can come coupled with the last big dump. You look on the daily chart for Bitcoin, we still haven't even come down to the 50-day. This is one of those setups where, especially because of inflation, especially if the stock market starts trending down, we could see a visit down to this 21-week moving average, which maybe is not something you want to hear. We could see a visit down here over the next few weeks. I'm not saying it's going to happen right now, but I'm saying if we trend down over the next few weeks to the $52,000 level for Bitcoin, that is not a bad thing. In fact, it's your best opportunity left in this market, period, in my opinion. I think it's an amazing opportunity, but you have to understand what's sentiment going to be like if we do that. People are going to be scared, and they're not going to take advantage of it, like always. Okay, like for example, if we've been trading here for a couple of weeks. Let's say we have a breakdown right here, and we trend down to let's say the low 50,000s, 52, 53, maybe even a little lower. The smart people, the big money, are going to be accumulating and longing at those positions. But 99% of people are probably not going to be doing that. They're going to be saying, "Oh, this was a double top. It's over." Which, in my opinion, is literally the silliest thing you could do. So, it's something I've been talking about for a while, and I haven't been wrong, but I also haven't been right because just nothing has happened yet. We're still just trading sideways. So for the past month, as I've been saying, watch out for that pullback. That's still just as valid as when I said it a month ago because we're still just trading sideways. This structure, these patterns need to play out before we have those big moves. And basically what's good now is that this pattern is nearly played out. So we're going to see that decision soon. I would say within the next week, especially as we lead into the halving. I think that'll be a fundamental catalyst that might actually cause that move. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that we have to have a massive dump here. All I'm saying is that this is a place to be cautious because the halving is it's a massive news event. And is it possible it ends up being a sell the news event short term? Absolutely. Just like the Bitcoin ETF approvals were a sell the news event short term, Bitcoin did dump here when the ETFs were approved. But then look what happened afterwards. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, this is a massive sell the news event, but I always think that's kind of dumb, because then look what happens afterwards. Sure, you can get really scared about this sell the news event. I'm saying this could be exactly the same thing, where this is another sell the news event for the next few weeks, and then we're going to see something like this the following months after. So I'm not really hung up on this. I personally think that it's very possible that we get a sell the news event, that Bitcoin does dump into the halving. We're going to see people go on social media and go on TV, go on CNBC and say, look, the halving was a complete failure, just like they said a couple months ago with the Bitcoin spot ETFs, it was a complete failure or whatever, right? And then it just starts going up and exploding as expected. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. We could break out. We could not have a substantial pullback, but I just think because inflation's running hot, especially right now, especially with the stock market coming down also, and Bitcoin still continuing to cool off here, I personally think Bitcoin is more bullish than the stock market. Clearly, Bitcoin has fundamental reasons why it is much more bullish right now, more than any other time in every 4 years. This is the most bullish portion. But even though in the immediate short term, the halving day, the week before the halving, is not necessarily where you should expect a big pump. In fact, often the opposite. The halving itself, the day, if you're going to be short term, that often actually comes with dumps, not actually pumps. It's just afterwards is where you get those massive pumps. Yeah, but looking on the weekly chart, I think there's it's not that I think, there is objectively massive support below us, especially at the $58,000 range. Realistically, I said 52,000. Realistically, we could see a dump. Maybe it only goes down to like 60,000. If we get a dump, another retest of some of those levels, because again, I personally do think Bitcoin is very bullish, but within this bullish context, yeah, a pullback makes sense. Now, because we've initially had this move, fake out, very often it actually ends up swinging the opposite way, which is another thing that I said in my last video a couple days ago, so be careful for that. But basically, if you're making a trade, or if you're planning on trading this, you want to wait for confirmations. So at this point, there's not really much you should be doing, in my opinion. It's more so you wait for a confirmation to see if it actually does start breaking down below the structure. And also on the moving averages, even just the daily moving averages, right now we're holding there. So technically there's no reason to panic in terms, well, first of all, there's never a reason to panic, but there's no reason to think we're having an imminent dump yet, because we're still holding all of this structure. But if we start breaking this structure, on the daily charts, 4 hours, we start breaking this structure, then, hey, if we get confirmations, then potentially, get ready for the more specific trades you want to enter, and once we get a clear direction in the very short term. Long term, midterm, I'm very confident where we're going. My opinion is up. But in the short term, again, it's still anyone's guess. But I do think we are going to see a massive increase in volatility soon. The Bollinger Bands, again, very tight. We have been sideways for a while. And if you look on this chart, we're only sideways for usually like 1-2 months maximum before getting some sort of real breakout. And we have been sideways for a month. So I think time is getting closer to where we are going to see an actual decision in this market. And get signed up to FEMX or BINGX below if you want to buy Bitcoin or altcoins. Without further ado, subscribe.